Now, I'd like to talk about something that has been growing like mushrooms across China recently: Russian goods stores. To start, let's take a look at an article. The location shown here is what's called a Russian goods store. So, what is it exactly? Essentially, it's like a supermarket that specializes in selling Russian products. These stores have been proliferating across China, and most of them look almost identical. If you search online, you'll find countless images of them. Here's an example. The store's sign typically features the words Russian goods store written in white against a blue background. Inside the store, you'll hear Russian music playing, and you'll find staff dressed in what looks like traditional Russian costumes, or at least clothes that give off that vibe, selling the products. This gives the impression that the shop is dedicated to Russian goods. Here's an example of what you might find in such stores: chocolates. Now, whether these chocolates are actually sold in Russia is unclear, but at first glance, they certainly look Russian. Interestingly, these Russian goods stores have become immensely popular in China, as evidenced by their rapid spread. Why are they so popular? One reason is that Chinese consumers don't trust domestically produced food. This distrust has been well founded for years due to various scandals involving Chinese food products. For example, in the meat industry, there have been cases where meat from diseased animals was sold with forged certificates. In agriculture, there are lingering concerns about the safety of pesticides. Moreover, in markets, you'll often see vegetables being sprayed with water to keep them fresh, but the water itself can sometimes be filthy. This lack of trust extends to a general sentiment where Chinese people don't trust their own countrymen, particularly when it comes to food. As a result, imported goods are preferred, especially when it comes to food for children. From a Japanese perspective, Russian food might not seem particularly appealing or familiar, but for Chinese consumers, the idea is that Russian products are likely better than Chinese-made ones. Additionally, China's government has been supportive of Russia in the context of the Ukraine war. It's even said that without Chinese backing, Russia would struggle to sustain its war efforts. China buys significant amounts of energy from Russia, and while China isn't overtly and publicly backing Russia, the sentiment among many Chinese citizens is to support Russia. This support translates into buying Russian products as a form of solidarity. Combining this with distrust of Chinese-made goods, these Russian goods stores have gained popularity and are now widespread across the country. Up to this point, you might think, well, that makes sense, but this is where the darker side of the story begins. There's a question circulating online: does Russia really have the capacity to produce enough food for export during a time of war? This doubt has led to investigations into whether the products sold in Russian goods stores are genuinely Russian. Russian citizens in China have taken photos of these stores and uploaded them online, claiming that many of the products sold there aren't available in Russia at all. For example, items like coffee. Russia isn't known for producing coffee, which typically comes from warmer regions. Then there are tropical fruits being sold as Russian products. It's obvious that tropical fruits can't be grown in Russia. Similarly, items like Russian milk are also questionable. Does Russia even have a significant dairy industry to support such claims? These inconsistencies have raised suspicions, and investigations have revealed that many of the so-called Russian products are actually made by Chinese companies using Russian-style packaging. In some cases, these goods are first exported to Russia and then re-imported back to China to meet legal requirements to label them as imported from Russia. For instance, China produces tropical fruits in its southern regions and then packages them to appear as Russian products. The primary reasons Chinese consumers buy from Russian goods stores are, as mentioned earlier, support for Russia and a desire to avoid made-in-China products. However, in reality, they are often buying products made by Chinese companies under the assumption that they are Russian. This situation is similar to cases where Wagyu beef is sold in China. While a small amount of authentic Wagyu may exist, most of it is falsely labeled. Even with the anti-Japanese education many Chinese citizens receive, they still prefer Japanese beef over Chinese-produced meat. This demonstrates how deeply distrusted Chinese food products are, even by the Chinese themselves. To further complicate matters, there are reports of a more insidious scheme involving currency exchange. This involves taking advantage of the disparity between official exchange rates and black market rates, particularly between the Chinese yuan, the US dollar, and the Russian ruble. Let's delve into this scheme with some numbers. A Chinese trader might start with 73,000 yuan, which can be exchanged for $10,000. In Russia, the $10,000 could be converted to 4.4 million rubles at black market rates. Then, these rubles are brought back to China and exchanged for 290,000 yuan at Chinese banks. Essentially, by just moving currency, the initial 73,000 yuan has grown to 290,000 yuan. This process can be repeated endlessly to generate substantial profits, provided the trader has access to reliable partners for black market exchanges in Russia. While these practices are illegal, profit-driven motives often lead to their occurrence. And given the large discrepancies between official and black market rates, it's likely that some people are engaging in such schemes. If these activities become too widespread, it could prompt the Chinese government to impose stricter regulations on yuan-ruble exchanges or even halt them altogether. For now, though, such practices continue to exploit the system, reflecting a complex web of economic incentives and consumer distrust.